everyone, and welcome to our MOA Kids Activities for Monday, May 11th. And I hope everybody had a good Mother's Day yesterday. Today, we are making sediment jars. So this is an activity you can do at home with a jar or a glass and soil from your backyard or from around your home. There's soil everywhere, so there's sure to be a source of it for you somewhere nearby. And the third ingredient that we need is water. So we should have all of those things at home. And a sediment jar is basically just figuring out the layers and the types of sediment that are in your soil. So I have my jar here that I made. This is actually soil from the museum. And what we've done, or what I've done, is I've put the soil in the jar and then added water and then let it sit. And gravity makes the heavy materials sink to the bottom, and some of these lighter bits are sort of floating around the top. If my soil was entirely sand, we would also have some clear water here, but it's not. It's pretty much three relatively equal parts, and I don't know, it's hard to see. We're getting some reflection here. Where's my arrows? But I've put some arrows there to show you where the lines of the soil are. So there's sand, and then there's silt, and then there's clay right at the top. So this is a very clay heavy soil. And in fact, you can take the water out now, skim the clay off the top and let it dry a little bit, and it can mold it into some small little pots, and I've done that before. So how do we make our sediment jar, and then what do we do with it? So I am going to tilt us down a little bit for a second. Before I do that, why are we doing this? Archaeologists are not, as I've said a number of times, we're not just interested in the artifacts, because the artifacts are just a portion, they're just a part of the story that we're trying to figure out on the site that we're excavating. And the soil that is surrounding all of these artifacts has a lot of information that it can tell us as well. So archaeologists are really interested in figuring out what the soil is made of. Is it clay, sand, silt? Clay, silt, sand in this case. And what types of things are in that soil. And the types of different materials like calcium or gypsum or other materials as well, they're in that soil because of the way the soil was formed, or activities that went on in that soil at some point in the past. And so it can help us understand what was going on that piece of land by looking at the soil today. And then I'm gonna tell you a little bit later about the colors, because we're gonna talk about colors. So right now, we're gonna make a sediment jar. So I'm gonna tilt us down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And I have some soil. I have my trusty little mason jar funnel. I have a mason jar. I also have some water, which we're going to use in a second. So we're going to put that in there. I'm going to lift you up a little bit. There we go. And this is going to be really simple, because we're going to dump our soil in there. And then we're going to tip it over and knock it everywhere, completely making my funnel unnecessary. That's okay. So there we have some soil in our mason jar, and I have some water, and I'm going to pour that in. And then I have a stick somewhere. I had a stick. I've lost it. Oh, there it is. And I'm going to stir it up, because we don't want it to be clumpy in the water. Just like so. And then I'm going to take this jar, because right now it's all one color. All of the particles of the soil are mixed up in the water, but we want to let it sit. And we're going to let it sit for about a day, about 24 hours, and then we come back and it should look more like our soil here. Now, my soil doesn't have a lot of color differentiation, so it means the colors aren't that easy to tell apart. Sometimes though they are, so unfortunately this soil isn't. But if you look really closely and in some good light, you can see those different layers. And maybe I'll try and, where's my arrows? I keep losing my arrows too. There they are. Oh, try to find a good light for everybody. No, it's not gonna work very well. There we go. So you can sort of see those color changes in those 3 layers of soil. So good, thank you. We can see the color layers now. So we have our sand at the bottom, silt in the middle, clay at the top. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make an observational drawing of that. So I'm gonna put this to the side so I can see it. Oh, there we go. And I have a drawing of a jar here. On our website, archaeologymuseum.ca, there is a printable template for you to print out if you would like, to color in. It has some other components on it as well, some information that might be of interest to people. All right, so we want to draw in our 3 layers. So we have sort of 3 relatively even layers, and I'm going to use this gray marker here, which doesn't show up very well on my paper, does it? Oh, there we go. And I'm going to color this in. It looks a bit brown on my yellow construction paper. I'm going to color that one in there. And then I've got my next layer, which is basically the same width. They're pretty similar. I'm going to color that one in. And you can put in some texture as well if you would like. If you want to add in some of the grains of the sand, because when I look closely I can see a lot more detail than you're able to see on my screen. But for now, we'll just do the 3 main layers here. And you can do your main layers, or you can do more. There. And just for fun, here's my layer of water at the top, and it's all murky. So there we have our sediment jar layers. I'm gonna pop this back up so you can see me. There we are. So our sediment jar layers. Clay is heavy, it's at the bottom, or sand is heavy, it's at the bottom, and then we have silt, and then we have sand. And people who are gardening are interested to know the chemical makeup, or the makeup of their soil, because very sandy soil isn't going to be very good for farming. You want that loam. Loam is these 2 together, or loam is all 3. Loam is all 3 of them together, I think. It's been a while since I taught soils. I didn't check that. All right, so one of the ways archaeologists record this information is using something called a Munsell chart. And Munsell is not specific for archaeology or soils. It's a company that sort of does very specific color classifications. And they do color for everything. So for people who do marketing and art and all sorts of different things. And soil colors are one of the things that they do. And archaeologists use these because they have codes that go with very specific colors. So for example, one code is 10YR8/3, and that color is a very pale brown. Now, if you were to write in a report that the soil was a very pale brown, that could be a lot of different colors depending on what you think a very pale brown is. Somebody else might not have a vision in their mind of very pale brown being exactly the same as yours. In fact, they're probably not. But if you write down the soil is 10YR 8/3, then somebody else can go to the Munsell chart and look up that color, just like in a library or in a dictionary, and see that exact same color that you had compared it to in that book. And, for example, that particular color, 10YR 8/3, indicates that there's a lot of gypsum in the soil. And gypsum is also something, if you are familiar with plaster of Paris, gypsum is the material that is used to make plaster of Paris. And it's called plaster of Paris because huge gypsum sources were found near Paris, France. And if you are familiar with Paris, Ontario, which is not too far from here, this is a little trivia for everybody, but Paris, Ontario has a lot of gypsum sources as well, and that's why it was called Paris. So Paris for the other Paris. And all related to plaster of Paris or gypsum. So if we can identify those types of things, we can begin to tell some of the story that is involved in that soil. And that is why archaeologists are interested. Right? So you can go to our website and you can find our sediment jar drawing page and make a sediment jar for yourself. And if you do, you want to take some photos of them, you're welcome to share them with us. We would love to see them. Our hashtag for our kids activities is #MOA Kids Activities. And we will see you, I will see you later on this week. You won't see me again until Friday. My new intern will be with you on Wednesday to talk about some invasive plants in the Medway Valley area. And Heather will be with you tomorrow and Thursday for some more MOA live talks. All right, so I will see everybody later. Bye-bye.